Okay, this is Larry Lowe, Music Director of Symphoria. I am pleased to welcome Peter Rabinowitz. We're going to talk a little bit about the program, which is our season finale in our Masterworks series. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
So let's talk about the Schubert, and we have programmed the Schubert Unfinished, which we were trying to think of the last time it's been programmed in Syracuse. Definitely, it's been a while. And it's such a popular work. Do you have any thoughts about why this piece isn't programmed as often as one might think it should be?
I don't know. It's interesting, but when I went back to re-listen to it, I realized I hadn't heard it, even on records in years and years and years, and certainly haven't heard it performed live in a long time. It used to be one of the big standard things. I think things go in and out. This one is not easy to program because it's not very long, because it doesn't have a big, climactic ending, and because it is actually incomplete. But it's also such a beautiful piece. And I must say that, as you know well, Larry, because we've had these long conversations. I'm the guy who's always trying to push for unusual repertoire for the orchestra. This concert, which excites me tremendously, is like two of the most canonical pieces that there are. I'd go hear Natasha play anything, but particularly the Tchaikovsky. But also, going back to the Schubert, I discovered that this is a work of far greater genius than I'd ever given it credit for.
Oh, absolutely. It is amazing what he wrote in these two movements of this incomplete symphony. Just listeners should know during Schubert's lifetime, none of these symphonies were published, and they were all kind of collected after the fact. This is a piece that he worked on, and then he worked on another symphony after that and finished. And this is one where it's perplexing why he didn't finish it, but in a way, when you think about the genius that's within these two movements, it would be intimidating to try to follow that, to try to continue that thread. And so I think there's a poignancy to the fact that it's not finished, that this is a work that exists kind of like as a snapshot in Schubert's maybe self-imposed critical artist, all the things that he would go through, like a lot of artists do in terms of like not feeling like he's good enough. And in this way, this symphony is just this incredible glimpse into the genius that is Schubert as a transitional composer, from the classical to romantic period. And you and I were talking a little bit off camera, well, on camera, but not recording, talking about how that the symphony is very forward looking, and maybe he was, maybe he was thinking about that. Maybe there was something in the direction of the symphony that many composers after followed and emulated, like Brahms. We're talking about Mendelssohn a little bit, and this is a composer that was absolutely ahead of his time when he was writing this music.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to get back to the head of the time. I also want to say something about the unfinished thing. One way to look at this piece, and we're never going to know, is to talk about, what psychological thing he was going through and why he didn't finish it. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But there's something else that we have to remember, and that is that Schubert, in his short life, wrote an absolutely unbelievable amount of music. And there are a lot of unfinished pieces in it, none quite as sensational as this one. But Schubert does strike me as the sort of person who, if he got off track because he decided to write a bunch of songs or something, when he got in the middle of the symphony, he might even forget that he had it. It's just there in his drawer and it almost got lost. But on the other hand, you can look at it and say, well, yes, it's possible he couldn't finish it because what it was doing was so radical. And one of the other reasons why it might not be so popular, but it's quite poignant, is that both movements end quietly. And in fact, they both end not only quietly, but with the first movement ends with what looks like it's going to be a loud ending, and then it just dies away. And the second movement is quiet, and then it raises just a little bit and then dies away again. Nobody else had done anything like that. it opens quietly and stays quiet for longer probably than any other, symphony of its time. And you talk about a transitional composer. Of all of Schubert's works, I think, even more than the Ninth Symphony, which came later, this is a work that has no looking back to the classical period. This is pure romantic. It's the most, color is terribly important. The orchestration, it's the first symphony where the trombones are present all the way through. I mean, Beethoven used them, like for punctuation marks, but Schubert puts them into the orchestra all the way through. And it's just a fabulous piece. And, it's just so beautiful. And I know we were also talking before, you had some visual images of the piece maybe you'd like to share with everybody.
Oh, sure.
It's very evocative.
Yeah. So I used to program a youth concert that was called like Fall into Autumn or something like that. And it was all autumnal, and usually the music was literally maybe surrounding Halloween or something. But then there aren't really that many symphonies or orchestral pieces that are specifically descriptive of just fall, just the weather, the wind, the trees swaying, the leaves rustling. And I'm not sure, and I was thinking about this after we talked about it. It might have something to do with the fact that the opening movement of this was used in the animated The Smurfs cartoon, which I saw when I was growing up. And Gargamel and the Smurfs and the wind, and I remember hearing this music and associating it with that kind of movement, and then I just kind of extended that into fall. And so then when I would talk to kids about just motion in music, and maybe the way that the leaves move in the fall, that circular motion in three, the 16th notes, and that chromatic rising line that's winding up and down is very easily translated into like a visual image. And for me, that's fall. And so, I would say, you can listen to it and you can think of whatever you might want to think of. When I listen to it, I think of this. And it always got that same kind of response from the young people audience where, they were all transfixed by this music. And I think it has that universal appeal. It's just, as you said, it's just so beautiful and so evocative that I of course wish there was more music, but at the same time I treasure these two movements because they're just so singularly beautiful. And it's true what you were saying about the Ninth Symphony. Looking back, that's a much more classical symphony in structure. And that makes this stand out among the symphonies. And I'm so glad that we're doing it. Do you remember, Peter, when we first programmed this to be on this season? I think it was in some other formulation.
We had originally programmed that it was going to be with the Beethoven Triple Concerto, and then it turned out we had COVID restrictions, and those trombones were what did us in, actually,
right,
to a large extent. There just wasn't
room
for them. So, but we did keep it on the season, and I'm really glad we did. One thing I want to point out, because it is relevant to what you were saying about the autumnal. When you say autumnal, of course, the composer that I think of immediately, besides Arnold Bax, who is one of my obscure favorites, and we should play November Woods, which is a great piece, but that's another point. You think, of course, of Brahms as the autumnal person, and we always think of Brahms as coming out of Beethoven, struggling with Beethoven, being the most Beethoven person. I don't know, if you think about this symphony as leading into Brahms, it really leads straight into the Brahms that we know and love so much. It's got all those pre-Brahmsian characters. So
yeah, even the swell that you were alluding to at the end of the second movement, that is a very typical Brahms at the end of a quiet movement. It's one of his favorite things to do, to kind of emphasize. Right. And what it does, it brings the forward motion to a standstill, and then we're just existing within that one moment, that singularity, and that swell just lets you revel in that moment. And it's such a great way that the symphony ends. Peter, I really look forward to conducting Symphoria in this, and thank
I look
you
forward
as
to
always.
hearing it. So I think I have the better part of that deal. But anyway, you all will too enjoy hearing it. So thanks.
Thanks, Peter. And now we will welcome Natasha Paremski, our piano soloist. All right, and now I'm very pleased to welcome Natasha Paremski. Natasha, welcome.
Hi, Larry. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. We really look forward to this this season finale concert. We're so excited that you are our guest soloist. We're ending the season and the concert with you, and we went with the very popular Tchaikovsky First Piano Concerto, and I wanted to start with just maybe you could talk about your history with this piece and maybe some thoughts about what makes this piece so enduring. Why this piece has remained so popular. I'm sure you were asked to perform it a lot. You know, what are some of the things about it that you think just resonate with people?
Well, I've been playing this piece since I was 13 years old, and I've had quite the journey with it. My actual first concerto engagement with orchestra just happened to be this very low key, very low pressure debut with the San Francisco Symphony when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
So I remember just spending so much time, you know, learning that piece and understanding that piece. And, you know, of course, like I love Tchaikovsky. I grew up on Tchaikovsky. I went to all the ballets when I was a kid, the Bolshoi, before it became so expensive. And still in Russia. And he's undoubtedly, I would consider kind of the roots of westernized classical music, Russian classical music. Yeah, Anton Rubinstein before him, but not as nearly as popular. And Tchaikovsky wrote theory books, and I mean, he was a very incredible man. Very underappreciated during his time, kind of had this whole gang of trolls that like just nonstop criticized his music, and yet we never play any of their music, hardly ever, except for like maybe Glinka. And then like who plays Cesar Cui? And he was like his biggest, you know.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. You're talking about the Russian Five, the Mighty Five. These other composers were really obsessed with finding Russia's voice in music, and Tchaikovsky was just hard on the sleeve. He was drawing from maybe some Russian themes and Germanic themes. It just didn't mean, you know, the distinction for him was just, I want to write beautiful music. And, you know, like the theme in the second movement that the flute introduces, that sort of thing. That's so quintessentially Tchaikovsky, where he's just writing music that people want to hear. And I think, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like you don't hear much of the other those critics, those people just searching for, you know, why aren't you writing something a little more nationalistic? But
I think there's plenty of nationalism in Tchaikovsky's music. Like the third movement is a Russian dance, and even just the way really any Russian composer approaches a melody is it always has that folk inflection, even if they're trying to be more westernized. And I definitely also, like, I don't know about you, but I definitely feel echoes of Brahms's orchestration in Tchaikovsky's music. And I know that he had spent a lot of time in the West. But yeah, you know, this piece, it's a problem in and of itself because it's so popular. You end up playing it so much, especially when you play it for, you know, for a little while now. It's going on 20 years almost, not yet. And you kind of get into kind of a grind, and you walk on stage and something has just kind of become a little, you know, maybe you're on tour, you're exhausted, you catch yourself being a little bit too like, I don't think I was really in that passage as much as I really should be. And that, I think that kind of maybe, I mean, it's just me being very candid and honest. Like, I think that maybe started happening a little bit. And one of those wonderful things that happened is I haven't been asked to play it for about 5 years. And I've been revisiting it, and I just see so much. I'm surprised by it again, and I think that's a wonderful feeling, to be surprised by something like, wow, that is just so beautiful, and to have that feeling and that connection again. So I'm really happy that I get to do it in Symphoria, actually.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. Like when something is very familiar, it's so great to step away from it, even if it, for whatever reason, people just stopped asking you to play that particular piece. And then when you go back and revisit it, you can find so many things, and it helps distance yourself also from that like 13 to 16-year-old person that was first getting to know the piece, so that you can get away from that a little bit, and then you kind of look at it with a different perspective. Happens the same for me, like conducting Beethoven 5. We're opening next season with that. That's a piece that I conducted a lot early on, and then I didn't for a while. And then every time I go back to it, it's like I try to make it a new piece, even though it's probably just as familiar as the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto that we're performing. So we have about 4 minutes left, and I wanted to ask you to tell the audience a little bit about your new position as artistic director of the New York Piano Society, which I was really excited to see that news. And can you tell us a little bit about that role?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking. I'm very excited about it. I was asked to take over in December, but I've been part of it actually in a number of ways for years now, because my very dear friend who's on our board, and he's been involved with them for a long time, he introduced me to it. It's a community of amateur pianists who are highly skilled, actually, but happen to have these like also highly demanding day jobs. It blew my mind when I first was introduced to them, because I was like, how do you have this insanely high pressure financial, like top executive position, or top doctor in New York City, or this lawyer, look, name it, and yet you come out and you play this like gorgeous, super challenging piano. Like these people play like Rachmaninoff etude tableaus and like pictures at an exhibition, and like all guns blazing. Like I've never seen a Chopin nocturne on the program. Like our upcoming program, people are playing like Mephisto Waltz, Liszt Funérailles, Chopin Third Sonata. I mean, it's insane. And so I'm just so in awe that people can juggle that much. And so when I was asked to take over, it was a complete no-brainer for me to say yes. And it's something really meaningful to me, because these people have also become my friends. This community have become my friends, and it's really wonderful to kind of step into a role of nurturing them, and kind of being a performer myself, just walking them through some things, like, where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I hate recording. I'm so nervous to record. You probably don't feel that way. And I'm like, I absolutely feel that way. I absolutely have performances where I come out and I have to give myself this whole pep talk, or recordings. I become internally a little bit of a mess, and I start doubting myself. So I understand what they're talking about. And so I can guide them through that in certain ways. And I also, I teach them, we have workshops, and it's really fun, because right now we're doing everything virtual. So it's actually even easier, because we have members who can join from Boston and other parts of the country, the world. And we've kind of done this like tiered thing where we start with a fix-it session. You just bring a passage, and then you have a workshop with me, and then you have a workshop with a master. Like our next master is Jean-Yves Thibaudet. And then, yeah.
Wow.
I know.
That's amazing.
I begged him, and he said yes.
That's so great. Just offer him a Cartier watch, and he'll be happy.
Yeah, I just had to buy him a horse farm. That's all. Yeah. Horse stable. And then we do a virtual concert, and we've been lucky enough that Clavier House in New York City, which is this incredible home to pianos, and they do restorations, and it's a beautiful venue, and they've got like this crazy setup, and we do virtual concerts there. And So it's been exciting to organize and kind of just, I mean, now I kind of understand maybe a little bit more what you do, Larry. You know, I mean, you bring people together and you kind of, I mean, even as a conductor, don't you feel sometimes you bring out the best, you have to bring out the best in people, and you have to know which button to push to, you know, bring out that, you know, excellence and success.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I, you know, while you were talking, I was definitely relating to so much of what you have to do in that position. And I think the thing that I really liked is when you can talk to them about, yeah, I'm a human being. These are things that affect me too. You know, you might think that they don't, but I'm, you know, I can totally relate to that. And this is how I overcome those struggles. And people can learn so much from someone who has that, you know, that same perspective. So Natasha, we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming to Syracuse to perform the Tchaikovsky, for coming next year as well. You have a huge fan base growing here in Syracuse, and we look forward to a long relationship.
Oh, same. And congratulations on the extension of your contract. That's amazing news.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Lucky Symphoria, lucky Syracuse.
Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, Natasha.